on finding, creating, and developing real estate investors. I'd like to thank everyone that's on the call today, and then for those that will be watching the replay a little bit later. You know, in an effort for everything that we can do to help our agents and all agents to thrive and survive and come out of this stronger and still standing at the other end of this, we're continuing on with our series. So today we've got a great guest, Susan Cocoran. Sorry. Hold on, I need some water. Susan's been with Keller Williams for about 7 or 8 years and has had many roles in leadership and ownership. And I'm going to pass we're grateful to have her on the call. She's a lot of information, a lot of great wealth of knowledge as well. So I'll let Susan introduce herself in a little bit more detail, and I will pass it to you. So take it away. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you, Janice. I very much appreciate being here. For those of you who are not familiar with myself or my husband, Dan, Dan was probably like the first 40 agents to join Keller Williams Advantage on Queen Street there, and started with Philip and Irene back in the day. Actually, when we were opening the Hamilton Market Center, Philip helped us do our financials, we had to do a budget forecast, which we will be forever grateful. We've had a long career with Keller Williams. Keller Williams has been very good to us. My husband, Dan, started off as an agent. Then he was a team leader for 4 years at Keller Williams Advantage. And then we opened the Hamilton Market Center. It will be 6 years ago, Red Day this year. So that's pretty exciting for us. And it will be 3 years ago that we opened Keller Williams in Niagara region. And we're pretty close to 300 agents between 2 market centers, and it's been a fabulous, fabulous opportunity for us. One of the things that changed for us as we moved, because we physically moved from Toronto to Hamilton 5 years ago, maybe 6 now, 5 years ago. I lose track, it's all a blur. Is that Hamilton really opened our eyes to the whole investor opportunity. You know, I think we saw investment going around in Toronto, but not like we really were exposed to it here. We are big believers that it's a great opportunity for real estate agents in 2 ways. First of all, as investors, either fully or as part of a JV, but also to go back in and sell more properties to your existing client base, which is primarily what we're going to talk about today. So as we get started, it's not letting me change screens here. Give me 1 second. There we go. As we get started, was there any specific that anyone was looking for out of today's call? I'm not sure if I can see the chat or not, or you can just unmute and ask me a question.
And if I could just jump in, if you aren't comfortable speaking or have a question, just type it in the chat and we'll read it out for you.
Oh yeah, that would be great. That would be great. Okay, so we're going to cover, this is going to be a big, broad swath of ideas and information. And what I'm going to do is suggest that if you have specific things you want to talk about, just to reach out to me after the fact and we can talk about them. So, so many different opportunities within the investing and how to do it. And a lot of people that we're working with in Hamilton are doing some next level stuff and seeing some really great results out of it. So BRRRR, I'm sure some of you have heard of BRRRR, buy, renovate, rent, refinance. Sometimes there's another R on there, which is repeat. Joint ventures, consortiums, a lot more consortium type of purchases these days. New construction. I think that somebody else's phone is not muted. I think they're rent to own is a really interesting strategy that we do see a lot in this 905 Drive area. We're going to talk about financial, how to position investment properties to help you secure investors, who your perfect client is, your superhero dream team, because those are the people that really kind of spread this huge amount of value around you, and then also how to get started with investors. So the BRRRR method. The BRRRR method works best. It doesn't have to be this way, but it works best if you have a cash buyer. Where we are in the 905, we're talking like the average house price is between $400,000 and $500,000. So there are still people that can buy cash. The advantage of cash is just that if you have the money up front, it makes the refinance easier. If you don't have cash and you're getting into a 1-year mortgage on a BRRRR, it means that you're probably going, when you go to refinance, it's going to take you longer to get your money out. So your opportunity is to buy cash, could be a line of credit, JV, so you're going to partner. We'll talk about JV later. Short-term mortgages, which again has some money attached to it, can eat into your ROI. But typically, if you are going to use a mortgage with your BRRRR, you do need 20 to 25% down. First of all, you want to avoid CMHC because it cuts into your costs. And alternatively, like I said, there's costs with that. Renovate. So one of the things about with the renovation is really only putting in money that's going to get you higher rents. And it's really one of those things that a lot of first-time investors have a hard time with because they think they're going to live there and they would do things that maybe that would make the unit more comfortable for them. Basically, bathrooms, kitchens, paint, floors, laundry, in-suite laundry is a big deal. Dishwashers, those kinds of things, the things that are going to really attract better tenants. Stay away from extras, lighting, baseboards, finishes, those things are not as important. The rent. When you rent, it's super important to take really great pictures the first time because every time you go to re-rent it, you're going to go back to your original pictures. Once you get tenants in place, the place can look a little bit tired or has too much personal items. So great staging pictures are fantastic. We are getting a lot more traction on Facebook Marketplace, Zumper, MLS, however you want to do your rent, and then using companies like Neighborly to do credit checks. And of course, you do want to check references. Comprehensive leases are super important, really making sure that tenants understand the consequences of any maintenance issues that are a result of their neglect. So toilets backing up, sinks backing up, plumbing has a big one on that. And then when you have a renovated unit, you do tend to attract better tenants. We're seeing a lot of, certainly more of the manual frame really wants, and they're prepared to pay more for it. The refinance is a super important part of being able to do the last R, which is repeat, is to be able to pull all your money back out and either reinvest it or pay yourself back, however it is that you want to do it. There are so many great resources for the BRRRR. I know there's RAIN, they do a lot of education. Out where we are in Burlington, that kind of covers the Burlington, Brantford, Hamilton, Niagara market, is the Right Club, REITE, the Right Club. There's the Hamilton Investment Club. There's lots of clubs that specialize in the BRRRR and the BRRRR methodology. One of the agents from Keller Williams Complete in Hamilton, his name is Alex Powell. If you friend Alex Powell on Facebook or Powell Properties on Facebook, Alex does a series of 3 videos on BRRRR. It's really great. He also does blogs on his properties. He does a lot of JV, and he does very distressed properties like crack houses, hoarder houses. Like he does some crazy stuff with BRRRR and JV. He's really worth following. Any questions about BRRRR? All right, moving along.
Hey, Susan. Susan. Hey, it's Irene here. I'm driving, so I managed to unmute myself. I may have missed it, but what is JB?
Joint venture. So joint venture,
Sure,
sorry.
got it. I got it. Okay, I got it.
We're going to spend
Thank
a little
you.
bit of time on joint venture. And I actually have a sample joint venture contract that should be vetted by your own lawyers. Here is the beauty of joint venture. There's two ways of doing joint venture. You can do joint venture with two buyers, or you can do it as a realtor. And this is what we're seeing a lot in the Hamilton Niagara markets, is that you as a realtor bring some really fantastic experiences and knowledge, and you have people that are buyers that really don't have the knowledge that you have or the access to properties like you have. So they're the money and you're the expert. So when you think about a joint venture, which is for you as a realtor to be an owner of an investment property with none of your own money, this is really a super cool way of getting into the market as a 50% owner of a property. For anybody who's taken bold, you can't let the drunk monkey get into your head about how this joint venture works, because like I said, Alex Powell, he does about 30 joint ventures a year. Sandy McKay, some of you know him from the Growth Summit and from YP. He also does a heap of joint ventures every year, and there are lots of investors out there that really do need, I want to say it's more like a tour guide to get into the investor market. So they have the down payment and they have the money for the renos. You find the properties, oversee the renos, bring in your dream team that are going to be able to get the property done, and you're going to manage that process as part of your contribution to the joint venture. When you refinance, they get their money back out, so that's their down payment as well as any cost for the renos. And then you're going to find the tenants, or you're going to find a property manager who is also going to take care of the tenants. It doesn't really matter. Property management is a tax write-off on an investment property, so whether you do it or somebody else does it, it's neither way financially. They are hands-off, passive investment. They're the ones who are qualifying for the mortgage, so you don't have to qualify for the mortgage. And they are really paying you or being partners with you because they would not have had a way in without you, right? You're basically the hired gun to be able to get them into the market. And you are the active, hands-on part of a business. Joint ventures are also work, as I mentioned, if you have two people that are investing. We'll talk a little bit about that at another time. Any questions on joint ventures before we move on? Alrighty. Consortium.
So they have, you have no, as an agent, like you have no like liability, financial liability in the venture?
Nope.
Sounds like, is it hard to find those investors that are open to that kind of arrangement?
I think that once you find your compelling business proposition for that there will be some people who will always agree to do it because they really don't have the time or the expertise. They really don't, right? I would suggest, if you really want to know more about JV, like I said, Sandy McKay, Alex Powell are probably the two biggest in our Hamilton Market Center that do it, and they find, like I said, lots of people every single year who will do that with them. Actually, Alex, even not only does he take 50% of the property, he charges a management fee to run the renos, to give you an idea. He's found a way to turn that JV into a really lucrative business for him and himself. And again, a lot of these people never would have been able to afford or had the lift on a property like that, if they didn't have somebody like an Alex or a Sandy, or I mean, Brian Karshty from our office does that as well. I mean, there's quite a few of them that do this, and it's yeah. How else could you possibly be a 50% owner of 30 or 40 properties if you didn't do it as a JV? The banks wouldn't let you, right? We all know how sticky the banks are. When we talk about, we're going to talk about the perfect client, and is it Jonathan?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jonathan, think like in your own mind, just go through your database and think about people that you know that have money. People that have money either in their house, and they could, when their mortgage comes up, they have, cash, but they still have, very solid jobs, teachers, policemen, firemen, like people that have very, very steady jobs. And, out of your 500 person database, there may only be 3 or 4, but if there is 3 or 4, the good news is that you could potentially be a 50% owner of 3 or 4 properties with those 3 or 4 individuals. Right? It's not an everybody strategy. It's just like those chosen few. That same group, as you're thinking about your database, could also be part of a consortium. And a consortium is really what we're seeing a lot more of right now, which is everybody kind of pooling their money together and buying cash. Sorry, Jonathan, did I answer your question about JV?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
As I mentioned, like this is really more of a broad. One of the things that I love about Keller Williams is that 3-foot circle of super smart people that share everything. I'm just going to put it out there. My email is susancorcoran@kw.com. Is anything that you want, email me. If you want an introduction, happy to do introductions. If you want more information about any of these, I'll send you everything that I have. I think that there is a lot of opportunity for real estate agents to sell investment properties into their existing database, especially right now. Winston Churchill's famous quote is, "Don't waste a good crisis." And right now, we're going through some economic shifts. There's going to be hesitant buyers, and for people who really do want to be able to jump into the market. And I think that there's a lot of speculation circulating that when things start to ease up on the current economic situation, the market's going to go crazy, is to really think about positioning some of these things now, because, Warren Buffett, you don't buy high and sell low. You buy when it's low and you take advantage of the lift.
So, Susan, we have a couple questions.
Yes.
One is, are they always a 50-50 split?
That's entirely up to you guys. You can do it any way you want. That's typically what it is.
Okay. And another question is, they're curious why somebody would give you 50% of the property for that service. It seems, I think this goes back a few slides, it seems like a great investment for the agent who is bringing but no money to the table, but not so great for the investor. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So when you think about JV, you're not thinking about the actual price of the house. You're really only talking about the financial contributions with what the cash partner is bringing, right? So you imagine, and I'm just going to use Hamilton numbers and Niagara numbers, not Toronto numbers. Say a house is worth, like a multi-unit is worth $500,000. And you're asking them for 3 or 4 months to come up with $500,000 or use a line of credit or get a mortgage in their name. For the $500,000, maybe they're putting in $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 worth of renos, depends on the property. And if you think about that, maybe their total in is, say, let's just say $540,000, right? They get 100% of that back. That's how you find these deals. That's what it's worth. That they put everything in and they are getting 100% of it back, and sometimes even more than that. and then you own the house 50-50, they have no money in because you paid them everything back, and you have no money in because all you did was you put in sweat equity. It's really just the way that you look at it. They really put no money in, and you really put no money in. Does that make sense that way?
I have a couple questions. So are they still collecting a commission, the agent on the purchase and eventual sale of that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And the other question is, like, typically how long is the rehab, and then like when do they refinance? Like, are they getting it back like 3 months or 3 to 6 months down the line, or is it like usually like 1 year after?
It really depends, again, on if they're a cash buyer, right? Then really, that is like the blue skies and sunshine scenario, is that they are 100% cash buyer and that they don't have a mortgage. So they're floating it for, sometimes you could do it in a month, depending on what the property is, right? If you're not doing a lot of renovations and you're really doing more paint, it's pretty easy to do that in a month. And then once it is, well, probably a month is too ambitious, and it depends on the market, because sometimes you can rent places while you're renovating them. A lot of tenants don't care because they would rather have a clean, beautiful place. I've seen that where, people have an opportunity, depending on what the property is, to even show the property to potential tenants even before it closes, in the form of almost like an open house. This was pre-COVID, by the way. This is not necessarily the way that it runs now. For us, because we did a BRRRR in Hamilton, and is that we did a 1 year mortgage. So what we did is we did a 1 year mortgage. It took us 4 months to do the renovations, partially because we had to put in 2 new kitchens. We had to move a kitchen. We had to put in a new furnace, 2 new bathrooms. We had to put laundry in one of the units. Like, it took us 4 months to get it ready to rent. So we carried it for 4 months, obviously empty, before we put tenants in. And then when our 1 year term came up, then we refinanced. We used a credit union for the first time around. And then the second time around, we moved it over to Scotia. We got all our money out. And I'll show you how that worked as a BRRRR, but it's the same as a joint venture, whether you're doing it with somebody else or not. I think it really depends on what the person's cash situation is to decide that. I would not go long-term mortgage, though. I would go short-term. Or you could do private money. That's your other option. If you know somebody who can do private money, give you private money, even at 10% for 4 months, interest only, and then you go for a conventional mortgage after that. That's another option. Any other questions?
Just confirmation, were you referring to Alex Powell?
Yeah, PAL, PAL Properties. He's an agent with KW Complete in Hamilton. Consortium. So the beauty of a consortium is that you don't have to deal with mortgage companies, and nobody has to have a mortgage in their name. And the consortium is really just a buyer's group. So if everybody chips in money, and you do it in the form, I'm going to put this through, as a numbered company, as a corporation, you really, first of all, have the financial protection of being incorporated. There's not one person who is the owner of such a corporation. And you have an opportunity to have a longer term slush fund to keep reinvesting in. It's actually not that hard to do. Once you do it once, you could probably do it 1,000 times. If you have a good accountant and or lawyer, we have our numbered companies set up through our lawyer, costs about $1,500. They can set up a business number, or you do the business number online. I think it's like $65. It takes about 15 minutes. The shareholder agreement of a consortium is the most important part. I want you to think of a shareholder agreement like a prenup, right? You get into marriage thinking that it's going to be sunshine and roses and rainbows, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. Now, if you did a consortium with quite a few people, your chances of having everybody stay with you through to the end is probably pretty slim. So the shareholder agreement is basically how you pay dividends and how you get out of business with people. That's where your lawyer is gonna make their money for you. So you set up a bank account, you have an accounting system, QuickBooks, either yourself or you pay a bookkeeper if you have an admin to do it. You decide on the number of shares, the buy-in price, and typically what happens when you have a shareholder agreement, there's not a lot of dividends the first year, that you make more money as you go. But I want you to imagine that you had 10 people that put in $100,000. And so now you have $1 million to go out and buy houses with. And again, I'm only going to speak for Hamilton, Niagara, because you could buy 2 houses, 3 houses for that, honestly. Not so easy in Toronto. The ROI numbers are still there for Toronto. I'm not saying that, but then you avoid the whole mortgage thing. So here is the beauty of a consortium. No mortgage. You're protected by the corporation. Whatever rent you collect is 100% cash flowing. So say, for example, you buy two $500,000 houses, and they cash flow $3,000 each a month. So you have $6,000 cash flow. So now you have $70,000 potentially. It'll be less than that by the time you take out all your expenses. Let's just say you have $60,000 in positive cash flow your first year. Then everybody gets a dividend check at the end of the year, and they made money, probably more than they would have made if they had left their money in a bank, and certainly at this particular time if they had left them in RSPs or any sort of stock, right? So imagine year 2, you weren't taking any dividends, and you were going to reinvest the $60,000. Maybe now that your company has some history, you could take a mortgage out, mortgage one of the properties or 2 of the properties, pull money out. Now you buy a 3rd property, and you imagine that every year you could buy a new property with no more money in, using the money that's in there, and financing maybe some of the properties for just a nominal amount so you could take advantage of low interest rates. You could literally buy 10 houses in 10 years with that one single initial investment. It's such a great idea, especially if you can find people. Either, again, it doesn't really matter what the number is. You can set the buy-in price, you can set the shares, you can set everything. Again, I would really talk to your lawyer and your accountant about that when you're doing that. Any questions about consortiums? We're seeing more and more consortium buys going on right now. There's actually an agent who works out of our Hamilton office, Matt, who's an accountant by trade, does all consortium buys. He's got a buying group in Toronto that buys out the Hamilton area. I think it's a really interesting option. And again, for you as an agent, it is your opportunity to own property or shares in a consortium where you don't have to put any money in.
Hi, Susan.
Hi,
it's Ernie from Keller Williams neighborhood. I have a question. What would you recommend if right at the moment I have one investment property? So if you were to start up either a joint venture or a consortium right off the bat, what would you recommend? Or both, or how would you do? What would be the best route to go?
I think that really it's a conversation with the people that may want to invest. So, imagine that you can go back out to your database and say, I'm putting together a buying group, and, it depends on everybody's temperatures. They may not want to be in a joint venture with somebody they don't know. They really might not, right? It really depends on their their comfort level. I think the conversation about investing is super interesting, and then finding out what they might be able to afford, tolerate, what their risk level is, all of those things, and then use the logical sequence of questioning along that lines to determine what might be the best fit for them.
So you can have a joint venture with 4 different investors.
You could, for sure you could.
Okay.
It really does become more of a consortium. The whole thing about the joint venture is that you have one person on the mortgage, right? Because it's harder to do, that's where the consortium would come into play if you had 4 people, because who's going to go mortgage? Like banks don't really.
But you have everyone's on title, but like say you do a joint venture, I'm the agent, I have one investor. We're both on title, but the investor holds the mortgage.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of rentals, so you have investors that will put down the down payment, pay for all the rentals, and split it 50-50. And then when you refinance, you pay them back all the money they invested, and then you're basically 50-50 on whatever happens.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And then, sorry, one more question. What was the 2 agents that you recommended to contact? The line was cutting in and out, and I got Alex. Can you spell that again?
Yeah, it's Pal, P-A-L, Alex Pal.
Okay. And was it Sandy?
Sandy McKay.
McKay. Okay, great. Thank you.
You know who else does that? I don't know if you know Dylan Suter. He does a lot of those as well. He's the Oakville office. Yeah, Dylan does a lot of that as well. He's, interestingly enough, with Dylan, he's primarily buying Sudbury North Bay. Just to give you an idea, right? Because
and you focus on, you said Hamilton, St. Catharines, Welland, that Niagara area. In terms of, if I was to buy something in one of those areas, St. Catharines, Welland, would you suggest which city would be better?
So I actually have a stat sheet towards the end of this that shows the ROIs by city.
Okay.
I'll tell you, Hamilton and Niagara are very different markets. It's funny because when we opened Hamilton, like Hamilton is our first baby, right? Like, I don't know if you have kids, but we feel like Hamilton is our first baby. We love it. We nurture it. My husband, Dan, and I work very hard on Hamilton. It is our first child. And then when we had our second child, which was Niagara, same parents, same Keller Williams systems and models, very different child, very different child. And it's kind of hard to articulate, but Niagara is just so much of a conservative market. And because it's a pretty large region, you have to be very specific about cities. I'll tell you, Welland is interesting because Welland is a commuter city town for St. Catharines. It's about a 15-minute drive. Welland is just one of those markets that people feel very comfortable renting in. They just have a lot of rentals. David Belanger from our St. Catharines office, he was doing a burr in Welland, and people were knocking on the door when they were doing the renovations to find out when they were going to rent it, because there was such a high demand for clean, finished properties in Welland.
Why is it? Why Welland?
Welland is sort of I wouldn't even say a B market. It was kind of a C market for a long time. And because it's so affordable, you just see a lot of young families going there. It's less expensive. It's just like one of those gentrifying cities. It's just quite pretty. Welland's quite pretty. St. Catharines, to me, I think is the better market out in Niagara region, and I'll tell you why. I love the employment base out here. So I think it's like 4 of the top 7 employers in Niagara region in general, but I'll refer specifically to St. Catharines. They're all education. You have Niagara College, you have Brock University, you have the school system here. Also in Niagara region, you have, you just have a lot of government jobs. In St. Catharines is the headquarters for almost every branch office for every major financial institution, and they have the biggest hospital network, which employs obviously more doctors, more nurses, more stable employees. It has a good employment base. I mean, Niagara Falls right now might be an interesting buy because they're being crushed by this pandemic. I mean, their whole industry is shut down. The majority of the people who work and live in Niagara Falls are in the hospitality industry. Casinos are shut down, hotels are shut down. There might be some pretty good deals about to go on there. But the same reason that I like St. Catharines is the same reason I like Hamilton. Hamilton has 4 hospitals. Moving from Toronto to Hamilton, I can't even begin to tell you how much better the healthcare system is in Hamilton. They have Mohawk, they have McMaster, which is ranked one of the top universities in Canada. Hamilton, we've watched it gentrify in the last 5 years that we've been here. St. Catharines is doing the same thing, and Welland is on that path. Yeah, it's one of those things where you have to decide how comfortable you are with a mature market versus like Toronto, which is really a very mature market, versus someplace that you do a little bit of speculation. There's a little bit more risk looking at cities that are that haven't gentrified to the same level as like a Toronto or a Mississauga, Oakville, Burlington. I'm only talking the West. You know, like those markets are hard to get into now from an investor standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I think
Susan,
Yes.
you said that Matt in Hamilton does a lot of consortiums. Was that Matt Christie?
Yes, Matt Christie. His name was escaping me. Yes.
Okay.
Matt, do you know
Thank
him?
you. I met him last year at the KW Young Professionals event. So he said he works with investors, but I just want to write it down.
Yeah, he lives in Swansea area. Yeah, he's he does a lot with investors. So I'm saying, you know, the thing again, such an amazing 3-foot circle of people that we work with at Keller Williams that do this stuff at such a high level. You know, as everybody's a little bit slower and we're having time to reinvest in ourselves and get ourselves ready for where the puck is about to go, right? As we're thinking about this market, is some really great people, super smart, and you don't even know, like they can refer you because they're in different markets to be able to refer you business in Toronto and you refer them business in Hamilton, Niagara region, or if you want to do that, or whatever happens to be. Such great people here. Such great people here. Any other questions about consortiums?
Well, there is a question, if you could clarify on refinancing. The question is how to get your initial investment back.
So
like exactly how the money's getting taken out.
Yeah, so how you get your money back is you have to buy smart, right? It's all about the buy. So you have to be able to buy below market conditions. And again, usually the more distressed the property is, the higher the valuation you're going to be able to get. So you want to watch the numbers. So when you put your money in as an investor or as a joint venture or as a consortium, and you're looking at a property that you know needs $50,000, $60,000 worth of renovations, you would know about what the current deal price is going to be in any given neighborhood. So you really have to buy smart. Your other option is to really go out and find an off-market property, but you want to make sure you do the buy properly. If it doesn't make financial sense, you're going to have to keep looking. There you go. You're looking for cash flow, undervalue. You're buying on behalf of the consortium, and you want to pay yourself. The whole point of all of these conversations is to help realtors, A, sell more houses, and B, get into the investment market themselves or become more of an investor with really, really great partners. Because again, we're seeing that lots of different places, and we want to spread that good energy and those good ideas of what is really possible for real estate agents to build wealth themselves. Anything else on consortium? All right, new construction. So new construction is really interesting. Typically what we're seeing out here is you can buy a brand new build condo for between 400, 450, 500. People love, as we talked about, renovated, new, gives you better tenants. The nice thing about new construction is if you get into a project early and say you have to put money down, either as a joint venture, a consortium, doesn't really matter. First, you want to make sure you're working with builders that will pay you, because you want to get paid as a realtor. Is that, say you put $40,000 or $50,000 down on new construction, and maybe it won't be built for 12 now with the pandemic, everything that didn't have a building permits on hold, is you could be 2 years out and they're holding on to your money, but you're taking advantage of the market getting a lift between now and then. So say for example, you buy for 500, by the time it's built, it's worth 550. You can either sell it, assign it, whatever, make yourself a quick 50 grand and get your money back out. So it's an interesting way to do, to make some money. Again, not everything's a home run. You can make $20,000, $30,000 at a time. Or you hang on to it, you rent it. And again, tenants love new build. You got to make sure it's going to carry. So you make sure you understand the what kind of current rents are around there, freehold, that there's no condo fees, or that you understand what they are. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's a realtor, and she also does mortgages. There are mortgage companies out there that will finance you on the appraised value once it's built, not the purchase price. To me, that is genius, because if you buy at 500 and once it's built, it's worth 550, and you get a mortgage for 550, you literally will get a good portion of what you paid in your down payment back out again, which allows you to reinvest. I like new construction too. Any questions about new construction before I move on? Again, you got to be smart about the buy. It's always about the buy, representing the buyer and buying smart, either below market value. With new builds, basically builders are giving you their best product or their cheapest product right out of the gate, so you have to get there first. That's the only thing I would say about new construction. Rent to own. So rent to own is a relatively new concept that we see out here quite a bit. And the beauty of rent to own for realtors is that you bring the buyer and you get paid for bringing the buyer. So when you think about rent to own, typically rent to own is when you is a depreciating asset. You know, say it's furniture or electronics or even a vehicle, like any of those things are all depreciating assets. Whereas rent to own in real estate is an appreciating asset, which is a completely different way of looking at that concept. So rent to own is basically ideal for people who have cash income. So hairdressers, servers, people that don't claim their income. Maybe on paper they look like they make 30 grand, but with tips they make 80. People that maybe have weak credit, could be newly divorced, could be people that are younger that don't have a lot of credit, or maybe they have student debt or whatever it happens to be. Or first-time home buyers that maybe don't have a big enough of a down payment. So what they are is they are an alternate financing option. So you can look at it two ways. You bring the buyer, you find the house, they do the financing. The other thing is if you have people that are looking for investment, this is how they make money. They are a usually 1 to 2 year private money. They have a secured asset in a house. So it's a great investment strategy if you have people that have ever asked you how to do private, that they have money and they want to do private money financing. Yeah, it's super interesting. There's a company that's part of the Right Club out of Hamilton. It's called JAG Properties, J-A-A-G, JAG Properties. And that's what they do. They work with real estate agents to bring a buyer in a house and they do the financing. They'll take a look at the situation of the buyer and then they will come up with options for them. They set, interestingly enough, they set the sale price at the end when they get into the rent to own situation. So for example, say for example, a buyer buys a house for $500,000 and they're doing a rent to own, they're obviously paying more per month because out of that more per month, they're saving up more of a down payment and they're paying a premium for the financing. But they are also building credit and they're having a coach who's going to help them get better credit. Happy to make introductions on rent to own. Again, we're seeing a lot more of that out this way. Also works well for real estate agents. If you want to do rent to own for yourselves, we have somebody in our office who does that. Yeah, it's a really cool strategy to get people into the market that would not be able to apply for traditional finance. Any questions about rent to own?
Yeah, hi Susan. I'm not really clear on how it works for the seller, rent to own. Like, are they still a landlord when they sign the APS, or
Well, there's no
how does it work?
There's no seller in this scenario. Basically, you're bringing the buyer. So imagine that you enter like we'll use JAG as an example. You introduce your buyer to JAG Properties and say, this is what they have, this is who they are. JAG Properties decides that they can work with them and they give you a budget to go and buy a house. So they say, listen, your buyer through a rent to own can afford a $500,000 house. You take your buyer out, find them a house, do the APS, and then it goes over to JAG to finance instead of a bank.
Gotcha.
And then the buyer goes on title once the terms of the rent to own have been fulfilled. So there's benefits. You know, usually if you're doing rent to own, you're thinking of it as your own house, and people tend to take better care of the property, right? I mean, that's one thing. And they really do use a coaching method. JAG does, I can't speak to everybody, but they use a coaching methodology to help people get their credit up, get their down payment up, to be able to fulfill their own at the end of the term. Any other questions around rent to own? But rent to own is just another bank. It's just another mortgage company, really, is what they are. If you think about your database right now and you think of all those people that are maybe first-time home buyers that have said, I need to save a little bit more money, but they're going to miss the market because by the time they save the money, the market will have gone up 8-10%. Think about all the people that are divorced, going through some financial changes, but they still want to own a house. Again, servers, hairdressers, anybody who's getting cash. Those are your perfect client for a rent to own, and you as a realtor makes money on the buy. Okay, I just want to share with you our property at 32 Holton in Hamilton, just to give you an example of the burr. So There's a lot of Hamilton that looks like downtown Toronto. There's so many great old houses in Hamilton. So the house was listed in 2018 at $499. We purchased it. We purchased it for $455. It was vacant. Thankfully, that solves a lot of problems when you can buy a vacant property. The owner was from Toronto. He was tired of driving back and forth. He wasn't taking care of the property. The property definitely needed some love. We closed on the property in August of 2018, and we had to put in a new kitchen, a bathroom, flooring, paint, second floor, nice big. It was really a 2-bedroom, and then one of the bedrooms was a kitchen, and we reconfigured it all. That took a little bit of work. And again, bathroom, kitchen, flooring, paint, and we added in suite laundry, so both units have their own laundry. You really don't, in my opinion, in-suite laundry is ideal. First of all, from a pest control standpoint, you just don't want people going to the laundromats and bringing stuff home with them. And you can attract a better tenant with in-suite laundry. As we went through the renovation, our furnace died, so we need a new furnace. We did decide to replace the windows. It was kind of one of those iffy things, but it just had to happen. The air conditioner we knew never worked. So we didn't do that until the following year. We didn't do that until 2019. And obviously there was some property cleanup. Just to show you the math on this, we put $80,000 in. So our total in was $535. We refinanced for $775. So you can see where the money's made. The money was made on the buy because we did buy below market. And we made $240,000, which allowed us to reinvest in some other properties. We get $3,100 a month. And because we have 25% down cash flow, which is super important. So this was the before and after pictures. It's hard to see, but this is the view of the back door going into the yard, and you can see the little window at the top there. The floors are a little bit tired looking. Bathrooms tired looking. That's the kitchen. You can see there was a window. That's the same window that from the back porch. There was a window there and somebody bricked it in. Looks like a little prison window. Anyways, and the backyard, the weeds were up to my waist and there was vines. Oops. I'm getting an internet connection is unstable. Hopefully you can all still hear me. Okay. And the backyard was a jungle, was an absolute jungle. This is the after pictures. So again, we knocked out that bricked in window. We put in a new kitchen, new appliances, new floors, couple of new fixtures, cleaned it all up. And, you know, I'll tell you one of the things that we learned, this is a little trick of investing, is Home Depot has this don't pay for 18 months. I don't know if any of you have ever seen that. And typically they have, if you have a Home Depot card and it's over $400, you don't have to pay for 6 months. But once every other month, they run this program where you don't have to pay for 18 months. So we got a credit card at Home Depot for $20,000. And we, when we got the 18-month notification, like you don't pay for 18 months, we bought $20,000 worth of Home Depot gift cards. So basically we bought ourselves time to repay $20,000 to Home Depot at no interest and no payments. That was super helpful. That was a really good lesson learned from people who have done this before us. All right, so this is the second floor. This old kitchen was in one of the bedrooms. You can see it exits out into a second floor deck. That's when we toured. You gotta love the old houses, the lath and plaster. That was the living room. There's Dan Cocoran. I don't know if any of you know Dan. Dan's up there. That's the loft. So originally it was 1 bedroom plus a loft, and we changed it to 2 bedrooms with the loft, which got us more money for rent. You can see the pictures here. We moved the kitchen. You can see it in the center top picture. We moved the kitchen into the open concept living room kitchen. We added the laundry and nice and clean. Got really nice tenants that had come from, had great references. They've been with us since for just over I guess it's been 2 and a bit years now. Yeah, it was a real learning curve. And I want to tell you, like, Dan and I felt like we were gonna throw up every day for the first 2 weeks that we bought the property. And the pain, like the anxiety and the stress, and all caused by not being familiar with the process and having to figure things out the first time. And once we got through the renovations and had it rented, we were like, oh my God, how do we get back into it again? It was, and we've done it since then, and loved every single minute of it since then. And this is where you as a realtor really bring your expertise, is helping people buy below market, helping them with space and what's going to make them the most amount of money, and holding their hand through the process like you do with probably every other property you sell. Just investment property is a little bit different. Any questions about the before and after pictures?
Sorry, Susan, it's David Capelli from Keller Williams neighborhood. How are you?
I'm excellent, David. How are you?
Great, thanks. On the 740 refi, how much money did you take out of the property to have it carrying at $3,100 a month?
We did 75%. Finance 75%, left 25% in because we didn't want to pay CMHC.
And after taxes and maintenance, is cash flow positive?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll show you an investor worksheet that we use, and I'm super happy to share, that helps you determine the math on these at a time. Just to be transparent, I mean, we budgeted $2,000 for the renovation and ended up spending $8,000. That was a lesson learned out of the first one for us, is whatever you think it's going to be, add more. Like, there's just gotchas. There's good gotchas and there's bad gotchas. You just really don't know.
Susan, did you guys use permits when you did the renos?
Who's asking?
I'm just curious on, like, if it should be done like with the intention of, like, okay, when we sell this then we can show it, or if it's like, well, let's just save money and then, do it for cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't really a change of use. So we talked to lots of people, and I'll tell you, you have to know your market. Hamilton is so loose, honestly. Like, you have to be hard pressed to get a parking ticket in this town. Like, really. There's things about Hamilton, they just don't care. They just don't have the people. Only if you really get kind of challenged by a neighbor or somebody calling the city on you, really just don't look. Commercial's different. You have to permit everything for commercial. I would suggest that most residential in Hamilton, most people don't get permits, especially if there's no change of use, no change in zoning, anything like that. Yeah, permits. Any other questions?
Oh, sorry, I have another question, Susan. So I saw it was listed $499. You bought it at $455.
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, I've only worked with like one investor in the past, and like I'm just curious. Do you guys like in the negotiation? Do you just call up an agent and ask like, what's the flexibility, and start to like lowball properties like when you're looking or working with investors? Or I'm just curious on how you find the deals.
So I'll tell you, this particular property was listed, I believe, at like 535, which was overpriced. It sat, and then the owner of the property took it off the market, and we were just talking to somebody at the office, and they told us that he had pulled it off the market. So we started a dialogue with him. It took about a month. Sorry, go on. Sorry. So so what happened is it was listed by an agent in our Hamilton office. It was overpriced or whatever. The owner wanted it that price, and when it didn't sell after 90 days, he took it off the market. And that's, we were talking to people around our office saying, listen, we're looking for an investment property. Let us know if you hear of anything. And that's when the agent said, listen, it just didn't work out. And he was overpriced, and he lost the inertia of the market because it was in the spring. You can see we closed in August, and I think we bought it in July. We just bought somebody at the right time. Like, it had been sitting empty, and he was carrying it himself. And he really had to it. It was really just a perfect storm in this particular case. We own a second property that's 1 unit, so it's a single family, and we bought it for exactly it came out, and we bought it sight unseen. With conditions on, we waived the conditions on financing because that's a bit of a deal killer. We had it conditional on home inspection. We put in the offer, and the agent took it, and it was done within a couple of hours. And we just happened to be the first people to see it and put in an offer, and he wasn't savvy enough to hold off on offers, and we just got ahead. We just got ahead of that. And then we did the home inspection 6 days later, and home was super solid and turned out. Some of it's just being a little bit bullish on getting to the property first and tying it up, and then taking your time to figure out if it's worth keeping or not.
Thanks for the tips.
Sorry, there's a bit of a delay. I'm sorry, did I answer your question?
Oh yeah, no, I said yes. Thank you for the tips. That's what I said.
All right. You know, one of the things about, again, is once you do your first one or you have a couple, it really is so much easier. I mean, we do run a property management company as part of our portfolio now. I can tell you, like, people, once you get into the business of investors, first of all, it just breeds more investors because they're out at dinner parties and they're saying, oh, I'm an investor and I bought it from Jonathan, or I bought it from David, or I bought it from Janice. And they're like, I want to get into the investor market. And they introduce you to their friends who want to get into investment properties, because it really is the safest, most logical investment for people to build a multi-generational wealth and cash flow that people really have a good retirement strategy around. So here is the property analyzer that we use. And I did mention this to somebody in Toronto. It doesn't cover the double Toronto land transfer tax, but everywhere else it works. So this is an Excel spreadsheet. The formulas auto-calculate. So you put in the purchase price, you put in how much the first mortgage is going to be for, any improvements, things like that, home inspection. You put in the gross rent, whether they're paying for any utilities or not, whether you're paying or they're paying, any additional costs, any repairs and maintenance, property management, any of those things. You figure out the property taxes, and what it does is it will auto-calculate exactly what your cash flow is going to be. And by the way, I do this on properties where agents say that it cash flows, and then I do it myself and it does not cash flow. But when you look at this, it gives you the absolute math to be able to play a little bit of red light, green light. Because if it doesn't cash flow, then the question is by how much. If it's $100 or $200, over a period of about a year or so, probably the market's going to catch up. Or conversely, if people move out and you're getting more current market rents, the cash flow could change. So negative cash flow isn't always a bad thing if you can get pretty close to cash flowing. And then you have to look at really the long-term ROI about what it's going to be able to make for your clients. And when you look at this stuff and you're building your investment portfolio, and I want you to think about your current client database, because again, these people are never going to live there, and their fear and hesitation, and again, I had all of those, Dan and I had all those things as well, is that when you look at the math, it takes a lot of the fear out of it because it makes good logical sense. It's a business conversation. It makes good sense. If this was a business and I said, look, you could put, say $100,000 down and you're gonna have that all paid back to you in a matter of 15 years and you're gonna make money every month, who wouldn't want to get into that business? So this is the first step in a process of being able to gather mind share from your current database on investment properties is just the math. So we'll talk about this a little bit later. If you want this Excel spreadsheet, email me. I will email it to you. If you want the JV contract, I'll send that to you as well. Happy to share everything that I have, but we use this property analyzer all the time. And then if you have clients, we do suggest you do this for them, PDF it and send it to them so that they have a copy of that. If you're selling an investment property, this is also a really good tool to be able to attach as an extra document. Tax deductions for investors. Oh, sorry, did somebody have a question about the form? All right, the Canada Revenue Agency, there is a form called a T776. So, things that I did not know before. You basically have 1 year to register your investment property as an investment property, and then you can basically write off all of your costs. So on this, oops, I went back too far. On this sheet here, where it says there's a cost to investment properties, like, the property management, for example, or utilities, when you get to, and maintenance and repairs, that's all factored into the cash flow process, but really you're going to get it back on your taxes. The other thing is that when you go to get a mortgage, the financial institutions like it when you're claiming it as an investment. So they may ask for that just as a sidebar. But everything that you're paying in terms of expenses around your property is a tax deduction. Now, I am not an accountant. Please talk to your accountant about that. But I think it's just important to know that there is options for tax deductions. Any questions about that? All right, so typical questions. How much do I need down? 20 to 25%. I would say 25 is better. CMHC is just, it's so much money that you don't get back. If you can avoid it, avoid it. We talked about that. You don't necessarily need positive cash flow. If you have a couple of $100 negative cash flow, the market will carry you through that. Utilities are tricky, okay? Because if you're not separately metered, you're better to bake it in. If you're separately metered, do make sure that your tenants are paying for that. Landlords do pay for water. And when you're looking at cash flow, that's really your short term, right? That's your cap rate. How much money are you cash flowing every month if it's a couple $100 bucks? But it's your long-term investment, and those are questions you need to ask your clients about what their investment strategy is. Because if they're young, if your investors are young, they have a longer game that they can play. They can amortize out over longer periods of time. They may not be so interested in the short-term money as they are about having their investment paid off, or maybe their plan is to buy a house every second year or every third year or every fourth year, and they're planning their money according to how much they can pull out when they're refinancing. So it's just important to understand what they're looking to achieve through their investment strategies. Any questions about what we've covered so far? All righty. Who is your perfect customer? I think it's really interesting to look through your database and categorize the people that you think would fit into one or any or all of the investment strategies that we talked about. So do they own their own home? Because if they don't, that might lead them down a different path. If you have a good friend who's a mortgage broker, finding out exactly who has mortgages coming out, because it's a win-win for the mortgage broker. I want you to imagine that somebody's mortgage is coming up and they have a substantial amount of money in their primary residence, selling them an investment property, and then your mortgage broker gets another mortgage out of that same client. It's a real win-win for both of you. Do they have money in other investments? And I'll say that if it's their RSPs, forget about it. That ship has sailed for now. If they have their money in the stock market, forget about it. That's shipped. That ship has sailed for now. If they have cash in the bank, if they have US cash in the bank, the exchange rate right now is ridiculous. So at what is like 1.4? So if they have $10,000 US dollars in the bank right now, it's worth $14,000 Canadian. They can move their money around and get money out of their US dollar accounts. That is the play right now, worth thinking about. Who's asking you about investment properties? Who's sniffing around about stuff? Do you have people that are renting that are asking you about first-time home buyers? And what is their age demographic? What kind of jobs do they have? Again, stable income people are overly the best, but maybe they have other assets, maybe they have other properties. You almost want to go through everybody in your database and figure out where they might fit into an investment property strategy. So, what stops your clients from becoming investors, right? A lot of it is they need to have somebody that they can trust to guide them through the process. And that's where you come in. Because fear really is a liar. I shared that personal story of Dan Mars, is that fear really is a liar. And that if you look at the math and you buy right, you really can't go wrong on investment properties. So if it's money, right? You know people who can get the money. If that's their fear is money, you have mortgage brokers. We talked about rent to own. There's private money out there. There's shared or pooled money out there. You have a solution for all of that. If it's time, you can be their solution to time. Either helping them with the resources, but most certainly bringing everything that you know to the table to help them and make it an easy process for them. Say their fear is that they don't know how to get started. You always start with a mortgage broker. Honestly, get people financed first, especially right now. As a brokerage, we're finding a lot of deals are falling apart based on financing. So you want to get people pre-qualified, and that also respects your time and energy. And then you get them a house. And it could be slow, it could be fast. You're basically positioning yourself for that when opportunity is knocking, you're ready to open the door. It also is a very compelling story if you're on the hunt for off-market properties, because you can go to people and say, listen, I have a buyer, her name is Janice, she's beautiful, she's an excellent cook, and she is looking to buy. She's been pre-approved for financing. You know, have you ever thought about selling? You can also do vendor take back. That's another strategy that you could use. And the knowledge. You know the real estate market in your areas, or you know people where there's good opportunities to buy, is that you really are the resource for your clients, and you can do a great job by them. So I would suggest one of the things that people are fearful about is contractors. Anyways, for lots of good reasons. Stereotypes exist for a reason. And that brings you to your superhero dream team, because this is part of what takes away all the fear, all the hesitation around any sort of renovation, or even just cleaning up a property and getting it ready to go. So this is you. You find the property, you are negotiating the best offer for your clients, and you are bringing a whole bunch of resources with you to be able to support them in getting their property positively cash flowing, or online, or rented, or in play. Let's just call it that. So, mortgage people, you really need to have a really great investment person who understands investment properties, has access to B money, private money. They need to really be able to work with your clients, because there's usually more information that's required for an investment property. If you don't know a good mortgage person who specializes in investment properties, I'm happy to introduce you to a couple that really do a lot of work with investors and have relationships with financial institutions who understand investors. It is a niche market, and you want to have resources in a niche market. If you want me to make introductions, just email me, susancorcoran@pw.com. Your renovation person. This is it. This is probably the biggest wild card in your hand, is having somebody who shows up, who's on time, on budget, who's going to make great suggestions for you on doing things that are going to make you money. The renovation person is your key to really having a product that, if you are doing a BRRRR, or you have to, or you're doing any combination of investment strategies, and you need to clean up a property, you really do need to find these people. And by the way, you can start that now. We have a Google sheet, Hamilton, Niagara, every category: plumber, electrician, landscaper, legal, second suites, you name the list of resources. We have 3 per category, because not everybody is always a rock star every single time. And we get that from other agents, from talking to clients. Who do you know that I should know, not for buying and selling, but for renovating, right? Or paint, or plumbing, or whatever it happens to be. So you really do want to have a great list of resources that way. Primarily, I would suggest that plumbers and electricians are the most in demand. You may need a bin person if you're doing a clean out. We talked about finance. Handyman, man, those are hard to find too. But when you find a great handyman, preferably somebody retired that doesn't necessarily want steady work, those are kind of the best. Property management, if they don't want to manage the property, if they don't want to take tenant calls, if they don't want to find these resource people and have to let people into properties, property management is a good option, and it's a tax write-off. But you really do want to have a good dream team around you, so that when you have an investment and it closes, you can get right into moving that product into cash flow. Any questions about the dream team? All right, so let's get started. First thing is the cash flow. You really must know your numbers. So when you set up a search for yourself about multi-unit or single family, it doesn't really matter. You may want to look for expired properties. You may want to look at canceled listings. You know, again, off-market properties are good. You want to know your numbers, and the purpose of knowing your numbers is start to gain mind share with your database. And that's how to send me an email and I'll send it to you. Because if you're using command or you're not using command, and you're doing an 8x8, or at least you're emailing, or you have people that you're thinking about, is to start to spotlight properties. Derek Doyle from our Hamilton office, this is one of his emails that he puts out. Picture, just a little catch, little virtual tour there. I tend to put more emphasis on the numbers to make sure that when you do get people that are interested, that they're pretty well pre-qualified. But you know, I think you have to really keep showing properties for people to gain momentum on the excitement of the properties, and just send stuff to your database. As you know, obviously, I think Hamilton and Niagara are an amazing place to invest, and the price point is good. And you can get a lot of cash flowing properties out here. But like I said, Dylan Suter is doing Sudbury, North Bay. You know, you can look at East or North, not Barrie anymore, but maybe Aurelia. There's lots of markets. Windsor's super hot right now, like super hot. Brantford's okay. I think Kitchener, Guelph might be a little bit mature. You'd have to talk to agents out there, but I'm just saying you don't have to necessarily market a property in your own neighborhood if you don't want to. There's other properties that you can do. And because you're bringing the buyer, you have an opportunity, if it's too far of a drive, to refer it out, make 30% for sending emails. You can spread the love. You don't know what your audience, where they feel comfortable. They may have grown up in London and still think London's a great place to invest, right? You can do a little bit more of a scattered approach on investment properties. I would suggest if you're going to market, just to stay away from student rentals. They're very complicated. And I would stay away from Airbnbs, or vacation rentals, because they're a lot more complicated. Different cities have different rules around vacation rentals. And investors can get caught flooded there. For example, Niagara Falls implemented a jurisdiction where you're allowed to have vacation rentals, and everybody who was outside of that had to rethink their strategies, or there was a big dump of properties after that. So you want to be careful about vacation rentals. So just talked about that. Go deep, go wide. Go through your database. Identify the people that might fit any given strategy. Go wide on the properties that you're sharing with them. You can do single family, you can do multi-unit, you could do apartment buildings. Like, you really don't know what those appetites are for things. And I'm sure anywhere where you look in Toronto and you see some of those like low-rise sixplexes and you're like, oh man, wouldn't I love to own those? You can pick those up in Hamilton for $1 million still. There are properties out there for multi-unit as well. So you want to be able to cast a wide net and then bring it down as you get into conversation about what your client's investment tolerance is. So here's the typical ROI. And these are for 2019. We got these from a rental site. These are estimated, but just to give you an idea about, and this is 2019, so this is not the current market that we're in, but I have to tell you, from a property management standpoint right now, we have tons of tenants coming through, good quality tenants. We have no shortage of good tenants going on right now, which is kind of interesting. So the ROI obviously is higher in Welland. Usually, well, you got to look at the price point, right? The average price for a duplex in Welland was $303,000. Again, some people have a line of credit for that. They could literally buy a house cash in Welland for that amount of money. Like, it's crazy. Fort Erie, same thing. You can still pick up a house for under 300 grand in Fort Erie. but I just wanted to share with you what the numbers are so you can see where the opportunities are and where people feel most comfortable about investing. Any questions about these numbers at all?
Hi, Susan. It's Ernie again. What do you charge for, what's your fee for a property manager?
So we do things a little bit differently out here because we have a lot of multi-owner properties. So typically industry standard is 8% for 1 year.
Okay.
That per unit. That's kind of industry standard for property management. We do over 10 units, we do a lower percentage. We have like a decelerating amount because when you deal with one investor, it makes it easier. So we pass that along. And we're trying, from a business perspective, we're trying to attract investors that have lots of properties.
And do you also charge when you are looking for a new tenant, you charge the regular 1 month's rent as well to the owner in addition to your 8%?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
So because we own brokerages and we own a property management company, I want to share that the property management company helps our agents sell more properties. That's really the way we look at the property management business, right? So we're not attached to the leasing. If agents want to lease their own properties, all the power to you. Some agents really don't want to do the leasing because it can be a very, look at the average rent, right? Like in St. Catharines or Hamilton at $1,400 or $1,500, a lot of people can spend their time more wisely than showing apartments or units. So, but if they want to do that, that's fine. And then we will manage the property. And the idea is that if we proactively manage a property and we're fair and reasonable with investors and we're not nickeling and diming and we're not charging for everything under the sun and we provide a really excellent investor experience, right, is that they will buy more properties. They don't have any headaches. They get all the benefit because they cash flow. They get all the benefit of the upside, and we take all of the service issues off on the other side, is to be able to go back to investors. And we don't compete with agents, our agents or other agents. It doesn't really matter. So we don't compete on selling property. So say, for example, Ernie, you had an investor and they came to us and said, listen, we want to sell our house. We would point them back to you. And so again, the whole philosophy is that the property management company is really to help our agents provide another level of service and also make more money and also attract more investors.
Okay, thank you.
Susan, Jonathan here. So do your Toronto agents that have their Toronto clients, let's just say they're looking to buy in Welland, do they typically work with an agent out there and then just collect a referral fee, or because they have limited access to the MLS for that real estate board out there. So just wondering how it's typically done.
It's a real mix. I have to tell you, it's a bit of a mix because I think it depends on the agent. If you have an investor that's looking to buy a house for $300,000-$400,000, the question is really whether it's worth it for you to drive down the highway, right? An hour and a half each way to go and show properties. There's some agents that like to do it. They have family out here, or they go and have a glass of wine somewhere where you can't have a glass of wine now or whatever. There are people that do it, and there are people that do refer. I would suggest it's probably more important in Hamilton, and I only say that because as a gentrifying city, neighborhoods can be, the house could look gorgeous and the neighborhood could be kind of strange, right? And you just have to, that's where knowing your value and being able to buy on the right side of things like that are important. I really think it just depends on the agent. And I also think you have to really trust the agent that you're referring to, right? Because if they're your investor client and your goal is to sell them lots of investment properties, you want to make sure that the person on the other end honors and respects the referral, right? Loves your client like you love your client. And that when that client wants to buy another property, that you're honored in every subsequent referral, right? Like you want to kind of negotiate that on your way in. So it's entirely up to you, but I think that there are it's just like Niagara agents referring somebody to Toronto. Like Toronto's got lots of neighborhoods, lots of great streets, dodgy streets, you really having somebody local definitely has its benefits. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So I guess like even just accessing like, because as a Toronto agent, I would have less limited access to. It's all through like what is it, Connect, that I could just see like properties in Welland or Niagara Falls. Like that's more limited as well on my end. So it's pretty much just browsing properties through like realtor.ca or something, right?
Yeah, so one of the people who works with us on the property management side, like we have access to the Niagara Association of Realtors and RAB, is if you want to be put on a like an MLS drip, we'll do that for you. It's no big deal. If you want to see properties that are out here, just email me and we'll get you set up on you just have to give us the criteria, you know how that works.
Right.
And we'll start sending it to you. And then what we can do is we can also send you properties that we think are interesting. Like there's a property right now on Aqueduct, and I can share that with Janice and she can share it out. It cash flows like $400 a month, and I can't remember what the price is. Don't quote me on what the price is. But there are opportunities out here, and I think if you don't want to partner with somebody who will look for your clients out here, then let us help you by putting you on a drip, and you can do the math on your own end. Sound
Okay,
good?
cool. Yeah, for sure.
We're gonna wrap it up. I think we're just at the end of our time. Oh, we're 2 minutes late, but I think if you keep showing up, sharing investment properties, that it'll catch fire. I think that you have to be really consistent about having those conversations with people, and don't be afraid of the unknown, because any questions you have, again, reach out to me personally, email, call me. My number was up there. You can get it from Janice, or you can look me up on Connect or on Facebook or Instagram or wherever. You can call me, ask me questions. If there's people that you want to be introduced to, I'm so happy to do that as well. If there's investment clubs or places I think that there are great resources, I'm happy to do that. And if you find yourself starting a conversation with an investor and you get stuck, do call me. I really do believe that as agents, as Keller Williams family, that we really have to help each other sell more properties into our existing client base, and that success breeds success, and that all ships rise with high tide. And people gave Dan and I opportunity and shared things with us, and I think it is our responsibility to help other people, because people did it for us. You got to pay it forward. Any questions? Anything that I can wrap up with? All right. So it's Susan Corcoran at KW.com. My phone number, because I couldn't give up my beautiful 416 number, even though I live in the 905, is 416-520-1411. Email me and I will send you everything that I have. And as I mentioned, we belong to this big, beautiful Keller Williams family, and there are so many amazing, awesome people here. And I think we all do better when we're together. Thank you, Janice, for inviting me today.
Yeah, Susan, thank you so much for your time and your wealth of knowledge. And I hope you don't get chirped too much in the 905 by having the 416.
I know who can give it up.
Right. I will wish everyone a great day. Thank you so much for tuning in. And again, if you have any questions, you can reach me at KW Portfolio. Respond to the link that you had for the invitation or Susan directly. Thanks. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Susan.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.